Hello all you amazing people of the internet, welcome back to another episode of Cassar Industries. We got a Statesman. Let me show you what this thing is, what we've done to it, what the plan is, and a repair that we are going to knock out today, which is fairly simple to do on a fairly common issue on these things. So this is it, guys. It's a Series 2 WH Statesman running the International 17-inch rims. The car is lowered on Pettis Springs. That is how I bought it. I got this thing really cheap. It's done low Ks. It's only done 192,000 Ks, and it is running it is a factory L67 Supercharger V6 car. Body is a little bit rough here and there, but all in all, it's in good nick. But interior on this thing is exceptional. So I basically bought this car with the intention of, for those of you who don't know my YouTube channel, I have a VY Calais drift car that runs an L67. So my intention was to buy this car, pull the motor out of it, keep the motor as a spare, maybe Ecotech swap this, and then move the car on. As I did have someone that was interested in this car originally and couldn't care less what engine was in it. So that was sort of the original plan, and once I got it and checked it over and see how little it needed for a roadworthy, I had to put rear shocks in it. I had to do the extension housing seal on the back of the auto, and I had to do valley gaskets and 2 tyres. That was it. And started driving this thing around a little bit. I actually really started to fall in love with how it drove. So there's a couple of blemishes on the body, but all in all, the thing is quite neat. So under the bonnet, as I mentioned before, it is running an L67, and it is quite a healthy engine. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to park it into the hoist area and get it sort of just sitting there and ready to go. I'll show you what I've already done to it engine-wise and what we're going to be addressing today. So basically, this motor has had a fair bit of work done to it. So all of the pulleys, belts, hoses have all been replaced. The previous owner was getting this thing ready to get it back on the road. It was in storage for a couple of years prior to that. So yeah, it had a whole bunch of work done. All the cooling systems been done. It's got a new water pump on it as well. It's got all new rotors and pads, and a bunch of suspension bushes have been done as well. But it did have a fairly bad leak from the back of the valley, so the inlet manifold gaskets needed to be done. It was running the plastic manifold gaskets. And as I said previously, the plan for this car was to pull this motor out. So can you just stay there? Thanks. So while I had the manifold off, I ended up porting the inlet manifold. I ended up putting a spacer underneath the supercharger as well, which I did on basically the mods that I've done to this engine are the same as what's on my drift car. So ported inlet manifold, supercharger spacer. It's got a bigger throttle body on it, a Mace Engineering bigger throttle body. And then we did the Mace Engineering lower inlet manifold gaskets, the metal ones. And we also put new rocket cover gaskets in it while we're at it. The only change that we've done since, the only other thing that we've done besides from that, which the Calais drift car does not have, is this thing is running a Power Bond race balancer. This thing did have a wobbly harmonic balancer on it as well. And rather than spend the money just for a standard one, I spent a little bit extra and got a 5% overdrive. So the supercharger is overdriven 5%. And I think with a standard upper pulley, it increases boost by about 1 or 1.5 PSI. But basically what we're going to be doing to this thing today is, I believe it's got a noisy coupler inside the snout of the supercharger. So when that happens, it sounds like this. So at idle and just above idle, you get a bit of a rumble from the front of the supercharger. So I'm not sure if you can hear that in the video. I'll be very surprised if you can't, because it is quite noisy, and you can also feel the reverberation of that through the car when you're taking off from a set of lights and stuff. So let's get this thing pulled apart, and I'll sort of show you what's going on with those couplings. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to pull the supercharger belt off, pull the engine cover off, and then we'll go from there. Rightio, so pull the engine cover off. Engine cover is just held on with 4 10mm nuts that sit on these studs. This one is broken, so we only had 3. So that's off and out of the way. We've taken the supercharger belt off, which is just one 15mm on this tensioner pulley here. So you pry that across. belt is just sitting there. Engine cover is out the back, and I've just primed it and given it a squirt of silver paint because it was looking a bit sorry for itself. Next thing that we need to do is pull the accessory drive belt off, which is a 15mm on this pulley here, to get that out of the way. Then we're going to remove the brace for the alternator, which is a 3/8 or 10mm bolt here, and then there's a 13mm nut down there. Take that off, and then we've got two 13mm bolts, one here and one down here, and we'll move the alternator out of the way. This is not a crucial step, but to get the snout off with the supercharger on the car, I personally like to do this to give us a little bit more space, as there is a couple of bolts down there, and it is a lot easier to get to them with this out of the way. So we'll get that done, this step done, and then we'll move on. Rightio, so we've got all of that stuff out of the way, so we've got a little bit more room for activities now. Next step we need to do is remove this fill plug here, this Allen plug up here. This is the fill plug for the supercharger to fill the snout of the supercharger with oil. So we're going to remove that and suck the oil out of the supercharger. Kind of sucks because I did recently just replace the oil on this supercharger, but it was really dirty, so consider the oil in it a flush, if you will. I'm going to use my little portable air sucker. You can just use like a little handheld syringe style sucker like what's sitting up on the rail down there. So we'll get all of the oil out. Once we do that, I normally shove a rag, sort of stuff it down the sides and down underneath the front of the snout to catch any residual oil that's in there and when we pull the supercharger off. So to pull the supercharger off, once we suck the oil out, you've got one 10mm bolt that goes down into the inlet manifold down there, and then all of these bolts that go around the outside. So we'll get everything sucked out and all those bolts removed. Sweet as, we've got our fill plug out and all the oil sucked out, and we've got all of the bolts out from around the snout of the supercharger. They're all just chilling over there. There is a sneaky one hidden down under the middle too, which sort of sits in a recess, sometimes hard to see. So now normally what I do is just get a little hammer and just knock on this edge here and here, just to bring the snout forward. And then you can sort of just get the snout up and out. And just like that, it's off. This is how it looks all pulled apart. There was a tiny bit of oil that came out. I've just given it a very, very quick wipe down. These are your two gears that sit on the front of the rotors. The rotors are inside here, obviously. So these sit on the front of the supercharger, on the front of the rotors. Your coupler mounts onto these 3 pins here. And it also mounts on these 3 pins here on the snout. This is obviously the snout of the car. This is the coupler itself, which is common for chewing out. And they get wear in these pins. The ones that don't have these bosses on them, these wear out and they chatter. If you jump onto the Mace Engineering website, you can get an upgraded coupler, which looks like this. This is about $60, $62. So basically, you put that on there, line up the holes, sort of push it home. The other 3 holes line up with the pins on the front of the gear. I like to clean this down and just put a very, very thin smear of Celastic on this mounting surface. You can put them on dry, but I'm just a fan of putting a little bit of grey CRC on here. So we'll do that. We'll get it cleaned up. We'll get this seated. We'll get some Celastic on there and get the snout mounted back onto the front of the supercharger. Cool. We have the snout sitting back on there. Now it's just a matter of going through and reversing everything we've already done. As far as tightening up these bolts go, you don't have to do them super tight. Just sort of get it nipped up. I don't know exactly what the torque spec on them is. I do apologize, but I normally just go till they sort of seat and then just give them another little nip. And just like that, it's all back together. You wouldn't even tell. The only thing left to do is fill the supercharger up with oil. I do highly recommend using the genuine Holden or AC Delco supercharger oil. That's the part number down there. You do need about 1 3/4 bottles to fill them. And normally when I fill them, I go till the oil level is pretty much at the bottom of the thread of the fill plug. So we'll do that, bang the fill plug in, and then we'll see if it's fixed. Sweet as, it's all filled up. Fill plug is back in. Moment of truth to see if it's fixed. Well, it already sounds better. I'm calling that fixed. Good stuff. So all that's left now is to put the engine cover back on. But before I do that, I'm actually going to whip out a quick modification on this because I've got about an hour to kill before my next job. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly do something sort of in this area, sort of like that. And got the engine cover back on too. So this is purely just for the supercharger sound. That's about it. It's essentially the same setup as what I've done on the drift car, 3.5-inch stainless with pod filter and a little standoff bracket to pick up that mount. And yeah, this is just simply for the supercharger sounds. See how it sounds. I do love a good honk. And I am calling that job all done. That just about does it, guys. Nice, simple repair done on the supercharger on this thing, as well as a bit of an intake mod in this area as well. Let us know in the comments what you reckon we should do with this car. I am currently daily driving it and I am really enjoying driving it. It's super comfortable and it's actually better on fuel than my wagon is, believe it or not. But yeah, I'm not really sure what I want to do with it moving forward, whether we stick to the original plan and eco swap this and keep this engine for a spare or whatever. I don't really know, but let us know what you think. If you want to see more content like this, please remember to like and subscribe. And until I see you in the next video, be good to yourselves and each other.